Today's video is really simple. It's about the equipment I've been using today for my photo shoot, especially in the last 1.5 months. I'm Richard and welcome to Sept Productions. And in front of me are the equipment I've been using very often in the last 1 month when I do photo shoots. And these are the equipment I personally prefer over the rest of the equipment I have. Now, if you have not followed me on my videos often, I'm a portrait photographer. I do a lot of portraiture, a lot of concept style shoot, and I also do a lot of cosplay shoots. So my job is of course to make people look fantastic on their photos, right? So on my table are the equipment I've been using more often than the rest of the equipment I have. And if you have followed my channel, you should know that I do loan a lot of equipment, but I personally own quite a bit too. I also own the GFX 100. I also own things like the RF 50mm, which is not on the table now. I will explain that later. So let's talk about the equipment I have on my table. This is the R5, and below attached to it is true adapter, a Sigma 40mm 1.4 art lens. This is the 85mm 1.2 RF, and this is the 200mm f2. And this is the Flash V1 Godox, and this is the trigger for the Godox Flash itself. And these are the equipment I use for most of my photo shoots today. Now, of course, I know these are really expensive equipment, and you probably can get the job done with equipment that are lower in price. But I'll explain to you why am I using such equipment today, and why do I enjoy using them. So let's first start off with why am I using the R5 over my GFX 100. You should know that the GFX 100 is a very good camera by now, and compared to whatever that is on this table, the GFX 100 with one of the GF lens will cost probably more than whatever is on the table and produce you a quality that is truly fantastic. Now, the R5, I would say, as the image quality from the R5 is not as good as the GFX 100, but only in extreme cases. So let's start off with the image quality first. The image quality of the R5 versus the GFX 100 is really simple. The GFX 100 has better dynamic range and more megapixels, and that matters a lot. Once the lens are sharp on both sides, the GFX 100 do produce more details and easier to do post-processing, as in you can actually crop a lot more, and with the greater dynamic range you can push the photos a lot more. However, usually when I do shoots outside, I try to get almost I would say a perfect frame. I will crop just a little, just for maybe orientation or leveling, but if not, I don't really need much cropping power. And not only that, I find that because the RF glass or the EF glass that I have on the table here are extremely sharp, they usually resolve the 45 megapixels on the R5 quite well. So pretty much I have quite a lot of details left in the photo itself, the image itself, that I can edit. And in regards to dynamic range, the GFX 100 is still superior to the R5 in dynamic range, but as you know, I said earlier, I'm a portrait photographer. I don't do landscape much, so I don't really need that much dynamic range at times. And when I do portrait, the only time where I need such dynamic range is only in very adverse lighting condition, and that is from like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Singapore time, where the sun is right overhead the person, extremely hot, extremely bright. Those are the time where I think I need a lot of dynamic range, but more often than not, I don't shoot in those conditions, and the R5 dynamic range is enough. When I mean dynamic range difference, you really can feel it. The GFX 100 dynamic range is bigger. You can, when you push the color, they get pushed easier, the shadows get lifted easier, and not only that, there is less noise in the shadows. So that is actually quite a big difference between the R5 and the GFX 100. When you use it, you can really feel it. But the reason why I don't use it is because the GFX 100 is really laggy to edit. 100 megapixels are really laggy on the computer. Even with 16 gig of RAM for my laptop and the latest mobile processor, it still slows down quite a bit. Not only that, when in the field, the R5 is a lot easier to use. Firstly, it's faster, it's quicker, its AF is very spot on, and IAF on this system is way better than the GFX 100 itself. And not only that, when I actually want to shoot quickly and accurately, the GFX 100, because the AF system is not as advanced, and because it's 100 megapixels, I tend to after each shot, I tend to actually check my shot a lot more. While on the R5, I'm quite confident I usually get the shot. In fact, as I said, most of my lenses here will actually give me a hit rate of over 95 to 99%, and I rarely miss a shot. As long as the AF box is on where I want, the R5 usually will deliver, and as such, it really improved my overall shooting cycle a lot better. So my photo shoots have dropped from 45 minutes to 1 hour photo shoot to about maybe 20 to 30 minutes with the R5, and still produce same amount of photos and with same amount of quality. So I really like the R5 a lot for the purpose of doing quick photo shoots and getting the image quality I want, and of course always having accurate AF. Now, that is so much for the R5. Other than that, I find that R5, the GFX100, is just personal preference after that. Okay, I don't talk about color because I think the Canon color and the Fuji color is a big debate. I shall not enter into that realm. Now, one of the things you notice on my table is that there is only one RF lens. There is two EF lens, and that is really simple. As I said, the R5, if you compare the GFX100 and the GF system has really sharp lenses. So on the R5, when I was picking my lenses, I also picked lenses that are sharp. They are, of course, well corrected, minimum CA, easy to edit, and of course, they can be used anywhere in the frame, so I can just focus on my photo shoot. And as such, all the lenses here are exactly that quality. Now, the Sigma 40mm, if you have seen my Sigma review, or if not, just click on the link above. The 40mm is truly a perfect 40mm. I would say as this 40mm is as sharp as an 85 and 200mm. That is a feat of its own because rarely a lens below 50 is as good as a short tele or a tele lens. It is really very rare. And I can tell you that this Sigma 40mm is fantastic, it's perfect. All the way to the corners, no CA, very sharp, minimum aberrations everywhere, and really it does deliver. And with the newer Sigma AF motor, it's really smooth, really accurate, and really fast. With the R5, 95% hit rate is no big deal. So the Sigma 40mm is my preferred lens when I do portraiture below 50mm. Now the thing is that you notice I have a RF 50mm in the past and I'm not using it today. It's not on the table here now. It's because the RF 50mm is optically inferior to the Sigma, and not only that, I find that the 50mm does bloom and CA in certain conditions. So if I'm shooting out in the sun, I prefer the 40mm Sigma purely because it is a more corrected image, and I do not want to deal with sudden surprises of CA, especially in the hair. So there are a few times where I shoot with the 50mm, I find that there are CA in the hair itself. You can look at some of my older reviews and I talk about it. There are some CA in certain part of the bokeh that affects the 50mm RF, while the Sigma 40mm doesn't get affected by it. Pretty much that is why I chose the Sigma 40mm over the RF 50mm that I have on hand. But the RF 50mm is something I will still choose when I shoot in the beach or in certain locations, because the 50mm has a nicer bokeh, a smoother bokeh, purely because it is a 1.2 lens, and the formula that the Canon use has a smoother bokeh and rendition overall. That is my personal feeling on that. So this is the 40mm Sigma. Notice that I don't have any lens that is wider than 40mm because when I do portraiture, I don't really quite like lenses wider than 40mm. They introduced a lot more distortion in the mid and outer frames purely because of perspective distortion. Nothing wrong with that, but I just don't prefer that over just a 40mm. I think the lowest I ever go is 35mm, but I wanted to try the Tamron 35mm that time, but the Tamron 35mm, sadly, the firmware don't support it properly and it doesn't have IBs. So between the 40mm Sigma and the 35mm Tamron, in Singapore, the price difference is about 200 Sing dollars. Not as much as the US price difference. And as such, I choose the Sigma 40mm purely because it's a more corrected and less CA. And overall, I know that if I shoot the Sigma, the image quality that comes out from it will be easy to edit purely because it is almost a perfect image itself. That's about it for the Sigma 40mm, and as I said, I don't like anything below 35 because there's too much distortion for my liking. Now, next up, the lens is the 85mm 1.2 RF. It's twice the focal range. In fact, the 200mm is slightly more than twice the focal range, and that's how I actually arrange my lens here. The RF 85mm, I think there's no need for introduction. It is a truly perfect lens. This lens is huge, it's massive, and it is perfect optically, I would say. There is really nothing much to talk about this lens because previously, if you have seen my previous video where I talk about equipment I use for photo shoot, I didn't put the RF 85mm out because during that time, what happened is that I said the EOS R with the 85mm isn't as good as the GFX100 with the 110, and now with the R5 with a better sensor, almost close to GFX100 type of dynamic range and a lot more megapixels, right? The 85mm finally can shine. It is extremely sharp. Take a look at some of the photos here. I can zoom in 100%. Really, really tech sharp. And with the R5 autofocus, you will never miss. 99% hit rate as long as the box is on where you want. This is fantastic of a lens. And not only that, this lens is ultra corrected. I think that after my testing with the R5 and the GFX100 110mm lenses, I find that this lens is probably slightly more corrected than even the 110 all the way to the corner. Take a look at this comparison shot here at night. You can see that this lens have totally no bloom, no glow, and no CA in very bright lighting conditions. So if you ask me, the RF 85mm is almost a perfect lens, especially for the R5 system. Really, with the R5, really, the 85mm is the lens to buy. If you don't want to buy the 85mm 1.2 because the 1.2 is too fast for you, you can always get the DS. Now, the DS is actually a more desirable lens for portraiture to me, purely because in bright daylight, this lens will max out. You can probably shoot. I mean, this R5 doesn't have a shutter above 1 to 8000, and with a 1.2 lens, you can easily break 1 to 8000 at ISO 100. Really, very easy. And that's a problem because buying a 1.2 lens and not being able to use 1.2, especially when you do full body shots so that you can actually separate the person nicely, is a waste. Of course, when you do close up or mid body, you don't need 1.2. When I do half body, I usually drop it to f2. And then when I do really close up, hit maybe half body or less than, say, half body, let's say 1/3 the body, I usually drop to 2.8 because when one eye is so sharp and the other eye is so blurred, it really is distracting. But stopping it down to 2.8 and you do something like 1/3 of a body, one eye is sharp, the other one is just slightly soft, it's still, I would say, acceptable to me. So I usually will stop down when I go closer, and that is where the DS is really nice because it's f2 and it produces nice bokeh. The bokeh is actually smoother than the 85mm 1.2 normally, but it's just smaller bokeh balls, right? So when you go close up, also the bokeh will be more, I think, smooth, and I feel a bit more enjoyable to use. And not only that, you probably don't really need to stop down as much in bright daylight because it is letting in about f2 equivalent of light compared to this 85 1.2, which is 1.2, very, very bright, good for night shoot, not so great for day shoot because you will cap out the shutter speed. That is pretty much it for the 85mm, perfect 85mm lens, and I really love it. And as I said, the only reason I didn't choose it last time is because the EOSR is not as great, but with the R5, fantastic piece of glass. Now, the last one is the 200mm, this massive glass of nearly 12 years old. So, the first manufactured copy of this is 12 years ago, and I got this at a very good price. I would say, as if you've seen my other video, I did say it. The price of this second-hand is the same price as the DS 85mm brand new. So, between a 200mm and an 85mm 1.2 DS, I think this is unique. I can't justify buying a 85mm 1.2 DS when I already got 85 1.2. And this lens is the same price as DS, and it really does produce fantastic image quality. In fact, some of the image you can see here, this is fantastic. It is not ultra sharp to the corner, just to say. This lens is like sharp in 90% of the frame, and the very extreme corner, like really very extreme, is not that sharp. Now, for portraiture purpose, you will probably never touch the extreme corner, so I don't really care. I only care mainly in the center and the mid regions, not really the extreme corners, because I don't think you can focus somebody at the corner there. The 200mm itself is an OEF lens. So the only problem is that, firstly, the eyepiece itself requires some time to start up. It requires about maybe I feel like about half a second to 1 second to start up. So when you do focus, when you press your shutter, you need to wait a while for the lens to stabilize before you take a shot. If not, the eyepiece will mess up with you. So there are times where I shoot at maybe 100 shutter or even 100 or even 50 shutter, and you can get soft shots because the eyepiece takes time to kick in. If you are shooting above 100, or should I say, if you're shooting above 200, you don't really care about the eyepiece as much. But the moment you shoot below 200, you should wait a little bit before snapping off the shot. So when you focus, hold still there for a while, snap the shot, you'll get really sharp shots with the 200mm. And with properly activated eyepiece, 150 can be done. Below 150 is really unstable. I don't recommend that. Now, the other thing about the 200mm is, of course, the AF. Among these three lenses here, it has the oldest AF motor. And it really shows that this lens AF, I would say, is good, not that bad. But even the Sigma 40mm here outperforms it slightly. That's how I feel it. It's a bit jerky. You can hear the lens go. So there's some jumping in the internal elements of the lens as it focuses. And you can really see it, how I put it. When you do portraiture with half body, and the model was to rock forward and backward, you can really hear this noise very obviously. And if your shutter is at 150, the AF itself will mess with your shot quite easily itself. And not only that, the accuracy is, I feel, slightly lower than the Sigma. So what I mean by slightly lower is that if I was to shoot maybe of a 100 shots, the Sigma probably gets me like maybe 98 sharp, and this gets me like 96 sharp. Now, it is a very minor difference in terms of sharpness, but it's there. You know, after I did at least like more than 5 shoots with each lens, and I really feel that the 200mm does seem to be slightly less accurate than the Sigma 40mm at times. But when I say less accurate, it just means that it produces a softer shot rather than a tech sharp shot. So no, the shots are still usable. It's just not as tech sharp as I want it to be on the 200mm. Other than that, I think that still more than 95% of tech sharp shot. So I don't think it will really matter to you. But sometimes when you do miss, it's quite irritating. The 200mm, of course, is a very heavy lens. It's just massive in every single term. So I don't recommend people to get it. But because, as I said, the price was so good in Singapore. As second-hand price is 4,000 Sing dollars. There is, I think, no more sets left. I just found 2 sets when I was reviewing this. I purchased one. The other set, I don't think is. I probably think it's already purchased, already sold off. Because the R5 with the 200mm does work perfectly well. 95% hit rate, tech sharp shot nearly all the way to the corners. I think there is nothing to complain. Overall, I think these are the 3 lenses I use because they produce you really fantastic image quality. Extremely sharp, low CA, low aberrations, low loca, very nice bokeh, and overall very accurate shots itself. That even if the model was to turn around, flip the head, go from back to front, run towards me, these 3 lenses will perform and get the shots I want. Something that the GFX 100 could not achieve in the past, and something many other lenses may not be able to achieve, especially the older 85mm Sigma. I find that the focus accuracy is a bit low. The modern Sigma are fantastic. Okay, so much for the lenses and the camera. Now, let's talk about the flash a bit. This is the Godox V1 Flash, and this is the Godox X Pro trigger. Now, I only put 1 copy here, but I have 3 of them, and I choose the V1 Flash over the other Godox Flashes because I find that this is really, firstly, very portable. Secondly, when you do zoom in the flash head, it can be better and brighter than let's say, the AD300. So the AD300 requires you to really bring in every single modifier, while the Godox V1 is really simple. You don't really need to bring much modifier except for maybe the soft light from the front. Everything else, you can zoom in, zoom out the head and get the job done. So when you zoom in the head at 105mm equivalent on the zoom head itself, it produces you a very controlled small beam of light that is really useful for the purpose of photo shoot. You really can control where the beam goes without needing a snoot or a grid that actually makes you lose a lot of light. So this V1 is definitely punching above its class. And because it's round head, I find that the light is a lot smoother. I don't like the square heads one. The square head one usually have some weird ripple of light. And because they are square, how they rotate, between straight, vertical, and landscape, there is a difference. While this guy is very predictable, it's a circle beam of light, and I can control it a lot better. But I think the biggest reason is because I love the magnetic filters. So this is the V1, and this is the magnetic filters on them. You can easily clip on the magnetic filters onto the V1 head itself. And this is great because Godox actually also sells a pack of gels at 20 Sing dollars. You can probably get it online for even cheaper. I think 15 Sing dollars or something. Never mind this. And they attach nicely on the head itself, so you can get all the different color lights you want. While just using the magnetic attachment and attach it on it, it's very, very convenient. It's cheap. $15 for a pack of gel of many, many colors. I think really there's nothing to complain. And this is the X Pro 1 trigger, and easy to configure. I don't want to talk much about it, but it is easy and it's quite good. Now, I did notice one thing is that the Godox system on the R5 is a lot more reliable. I do not know what's the reason, but when I was using the EOS R and also using the GFX 100, I find that they are less reliable, which means that for some reason after maybe 20-30 shots, there's always 1 or 2 misfires, while in the R5 there is less misfire. In fact, I did a few shoots with flash with the R5, and I've never encountered much misfire, maybe just once throughout the entire shoot. So I don't know whether is it the R5 communication with the flash is better, or maybe they just play nicely, or maybe there's some configuration that I didn't know that it was on the R5, not the EOS R, that made it a lot more better. Maybe if you have any experience, just tell me on it. I am not really sure why is it more reliable. But yeah, it is more reliable and I get the job done better. So overall, these are the equipment I used for my shoots recently. They are not cheap equipment, and I think every of them can be replaced by cheaper ones. So if you want to replace a cheaper version of the 85mm, there's of course the Sigma 85mm 1.4, not bad of a lens, just not as corrected as the RF. And also there's the upcoming 85mm f2 RF lens. So they are of course very comparable lenses, it's just slightly slower than the 85 1.2. Now for this 40mm here, there is of course the 35mm glasses. There is the 35mm Canon, which is more expensive, so I don't think that's a good replacement. But the Tamron 35mm is fantastic. The only problem is that the firmware is not working really well with it now, so you have to wait a bit. And if not, the optical quality of the Tamron 35mm should be comparable with the Sigma 40mm here. Now for the 200mm f2, if you can't afford the 200mm f2, maybe you should not buy the 200mm at all, because alternatives are like the 200mm zooms, the 200mm how do I put it, the 200mm f2.8 zooms, the 7200s, or maybe the 200mm f2.8 prime, but none of them are as sharp as this 200mm f2. So personally, I won't use either of them because I just feel that they don't produce the image quality that I like, so I probably will not use them. Alternatively, if you ask me to replace this lens with something else, I would say as the 135 f1.8 Sigma will be a good choice. Firstly, it is a newer Sigma lens, so it uses a newer Sigma motor. And secondly, it is extremely sharp and more corrected than the 85 1.4 Sigma. So I'll probably use the 135 Sigma, which is still a significantly longer lens than 85, a full 50% longer. So it allows you to frame your stuff tighter and allows you to evade messy backgrounds better. So one thing I like about 200mm is that I can shoot from the floor up and still make the subject look straight, and I also can evade background a lot easier. Singapore background is a bit messy at times. So that is about it for the equipment I use today. In the future, I'll be reviewing more equipment, so setup usually will change over time. And if I do review an equipment that I like, I may actually purchase it and of course replace whatever I have on the table itself. I really think these things are some of the best lenses and camera around. There is always alternative. In fact, the R5 can be replaced by the R6 as long as you don't need 45 megapixels. And if you don't mind a slower system, there is the EOS R. But if you're going to buy the EOS R, I recommend you go Sony instead, because I'm not really biased to branding. I just think that the Canon has the better lens lineup today. Or should I say, the RF lenses is nicer, and now with the R5, it works extremely well with the EF lenses. So I personally prefer this setup over the Sony ones. But if you could not afford the R6 and the R5, I will recommend you to consider A7R3. A7R3 or A7 III. Now, A7 III is something I don't recommend as much, or should I say, from my personal experience when I use it, I just feel that the photo, because of the anti-aliasing filter or something, it just doesn't feel as tech sharp as I want it to be. It's just a little bugging to me, I don't think it affects most people. I think most people out there are perfectly fine with it. But I really like the A7R3 quality. As I said, the only issue is that Sony has some colors directly off the RAW. There's some colors that I don't like, but you can easily edit them in Lightroom and you achieve the same quality. And then Sony has equivalent lenses for everything. If not, you can always use the Sigma 135. The Sony now has, I think I think Sigma now has the 85 1.4 DGDN, which is for the mirrorless system. On the Sony A7 III will be fantastic. So you can consider that lens. And then for the Sigma 40mm, there's always the Sigma 40mm, and of course there's the Sigma 35 1.4, should I say wrong? That's 35 1.2 DGDN, which is very advanced, very new lens. And if you ask me, I saw the image comparison before. I think it's very on par with the 40mm. It is, of course, similar to like the Tamron itself, not as sharp at the corner and not as corrected. The 40mm is more corrected and slightly sharper, but you do get 0.5 stops more of aperture because it's a 1.2 versus a 1.4, and it's a 35mm. So I think the Sony system is not a bad choice if you cannot afford the R5 and R6. No brand loyalty here, because you want to get the best image quality with the money you have, and I think the Sony just does it better than the Canon system. at least below the R6 price point. And that's about it for today. So I will talk about what am I going to do in the future. So in the future, I'll be reviewing a lot more glass. As I said, I'll be loading more equipment and I'll also be testing more stuff. Especially now they have the EOS R5 with the adapter. I find that a lot of the EF lens are worthy of a retest because in the past with the mirrored lens, cameras, I find that they tend to miss too much for my liking. But with the R5 it's so accurate, I can really test out very nicely a lot of the old EF mount glass. In fact, I did test the 35mm 1.4 Mark II. I really like that glass too, but it's not as sharp as the corner compared to the Sigma 40. However, I forgot to do some things and I returned the lens. I need to rent the lens again and get some tests out before I can actually publish the review. If not, I'll also be reviewing this. I'll also be reviewing this lens in the future. Now, this is a massive lens, as you can see here. This is the Sigma 120 to 300mm, and in Singapore, I got it at a really good price. I mean, it was like 2,000 Sing dollars. So if you convert to USD, I think it's about 1.3K, 1.2K. So this is something I'm testing out now. It's really not super expensive for a 300 f2.8. It's just a massive piece of glass. Look at this comparison. It is bigger, it is longer, and it is heavier. It is like 3.2 kg versus 2.5 kg. Very heavy piece of glass. But I'm going to test it today and see how it works and maybe write a review next time. Oh, there's also one last thing that I may be doing a live tomorrow at 10 p.m. Probably I will announce it on my YouTube later, but I'll be doing a live because I'll be testing the Atem Mini Pro purely because I'm helping a friend out. I need to test the live streaming capabilities before I actually go and do a live stream for him. And I'll be doing that and I'll be answering any questions you have on the R5 or the GFX. So if you want to ask anything regarding the R5 or the GFX, do come and join me in my channel on YouTube, live streaming tomorrow at 10 p.m. And tomorrow is Sunday, by the way, Sunday 10 p.m. GMT +8 timing. So if you are living in somewhere else around the world, just convert accordingly and I'll see you then. You can ask me questions and I will probably answer it for you. You can ask me anything regarding gear or regarding my photo shoots themselves. Till then, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. And since you have lasted so long, do like and subscribe to my channel. Bye-bye.